Alright, hello and welcome back. My name is Myre and this is the Star Citizen Monthly Report for March 2021. Alright, so let's just get into it then. Alright, so first of all, look at that. I believe that's Crusader, right? Like it could be a picture or something from Microsoft Flight Simulator, but yeah. I wonder how far below this, though, is the kill volume, though, you know? Like, how far do you have to go until, like, you blow up? And how high above this is, of course, the Cloud City, right? How far above this is, not New Babbage, but Horizon, right? Because if it's this low, then it's gonna have some really funky weather. Unless, of course, this is just new clouds in general, which is awesome. Anyway, so let's check it out. So, AI content. So March's report starts with the AI content team who spent part of the month working on the engineer behavior, including improving the usable split of the mannequin tags coming from the use channel and objects it interacts with. Okay. So on-foot security tours and tour guide activities were further developed too. Of course, tour guides are supposed to be coming in with Horizon and New Babbage. I wasn't thinking that these would be a thing you would see straight away, but it looks like they want to make Horizon as true to that initial concept art as possible. The bed bunks behavior progressed, with the team working towards a better abstraction of bed shutter usage and investigating how to support bed sheets when characters are sleeping. Okay. Kickoffs to define the medic, illegal goods dealer, deck crew, and janitor behaviors were done too. And on that, on the roadmap, we also saw a one for a NPC hawker, or like a vendor, or street vendor. So specifically for the PU, AI content completed the first pass on the on the hawker behavior and began modifying the kiosk setup to replace the old activities. The old activities being the ones that we saw in Levski, where they shout at you but do nothing. So our goal is to quickly push through some of the content we can already exploit in Star Citizen based on the existing scenario and allow the players to experience a more interactive environment. Alright, so with AI features, so March saw AI features complete the first pass on subcomponent targeting. So the ability to target like not just somebody's ship or a turret, but also maybe something else. So this is now integrated into the main game dev branch and will initially improve the behavior used when smaller vessels attack capital ships, allowing for more effective element targeting, complex attack patterns, and tactics. So something that's coming in very soon this year is shield emitters. So like that'll give people in smaller ships a target to hit. You destroy the emitter and then that ship isn't able to then put up a shield, and then you're essentially in phase 2 of combat where every shot now hits the hull. The pilot's security behavior was also restructured and extended. This is used, among other things, when security spaceships validate illegal content inside ships. Alongside creating a better structured and more scalable activity, it allows the security pilots to request the target surrender and handle different player behaviors. So we're finally at stop right there, criminal scum, and I believe that the surrender mechanic is something that was on the roadmap for a time. The pilot will also continue to request that the player surrenders during combat, allowing players to end the conflict and be arrested. That's a nice change, because right now it's either on or off. Either they attack you or they don't. So now you can surrender mid-combat, but of course you will still get the crimes for initially resisting arrest. They also worked to allow AI pilots to correctly dock to any suspect-supported location. This functionality is similar to landing, as it allows ships to navigate close to the collar and then perform a docking maneuver. So here's a little image or video, it's 2 minutes long. And what do we have here? It looks like a hammerhead currently leaving a station, turning and burning, and will probably fly all the way back and then dock. And these are AI elements doing this. So in the verse, we'll not only just see players docking to stations like idiots, but we'll also see NPCs doing it the way that the devs had intended. which I imagine will make everything look a bit more realistic. And yeah, the hammerhead docks from the front too, which makes this a bit easier for them as well. And yeah, I can already see like NPCs hogging all the docking ports, so like making it so that you'll have to like wait a long ass time to find one of these things, but we'll see. I'm sure like the AI will spawn in depending on like player activity and stuff, so the stations always seem busy, but if you have people coming in that need to dock, then these guys will then get out. But with the Quanta system, I wonder, because with the Quanta system, this AI hammerhead isn't just a random AI hammerhead. You know, like Pete Peterson has that ship, and he's an AI guy, and he has AI things to do, so we'll see. And the hammerhead then teleports? What happens there? Oh, what do you mean? It didn't teleport, it docked. Yeah, it touched the thing, and then like we went to this camera. It's not the same camera, because it goes back again. Alright, and then that's them undocking again. So it'll be cool to see. I mean, like, there's a video I saw on Reddit where somebody was running down that shaft, and it did take a while. And, you know, like, maybe we might need some gray cats or something. And that's that. So that's AI docking to a space station. All right, so the eat and drink behavior was further developed, particularly chow line usage. In addition to cleaning up the chow line eating and drinking animations, the team improved the drinking behavior to make taking a cup a separate action. Plus, the exit animations are now split between taking the tray and exiting the tables so that multiple actions can be performed for specific bounce poses. The surrender and cowering behaviors used by both trained and untrained agents progressed. This is used in hostile scenarios when NPCs are unable to fight back, are overwhelmed, or don't have the tools for combat to prioritize preserving their lives. So yeah, like NPCs are gonna have like differing ranges of skill, and each like archetype will have their own like specific animations and way they do things, which is gonna be kind of cool, unless you get shot, you know, like trying to gawk at their animations. On the subsumption logic side, several new tasks were introduced, including has any tag in tag selection, okay, which evaluates whether an object has tags under specific parent tags, broadcast in my action areas, which propagates an event in the action areas the agent is contained, and merge mannequin tags. So it takes two mannequin tags variables and merges them into one. They also supported Alpha 3.13 with bug fixes and optimization, including issues causing slow NPC reactions and pilot security to complete flight activity too early. So, slow NPC reactions, does that include the bartender? Because I always use the bartender to see how slow a server is. We'll see with 3.13. Alright, and what do we have here? This isn't Chowline. This is an NPC walking up to it looks like just a panel. Alright, that is a power plant. And they're inspecting, and you can see the little subcomponent slots on the power plant as well. It's kind of cool. And we still got a minute left. This is really in-depth. Oh, look, he took a subcomponent out. Can you imagine if like you had an NPC on your ship, and as you're flying, you hear a subcomponent offline, and it's because Billy over here just pulled it out to do this. Okay, and he's taken all of them out, so there's an animation for them to do everything. All right, awesome. So, yo, Crucian, welcome. Looking forward to the Stanton 7 this weekend. We're going through the monthly report at the moment. We're recording this for YouTube, so I'm trying not to interact with chat too much unless it's like directly about what we're looking at right here. All right, so yeah, there we go. An engineer doing all that stuff there, looking at the thing over there, a solid 60 FPS. And yeah, I wonder when exactly this is going to be the case, because this wouldn't be in Star Citizen. Otherwise, it'd be kind of weird for an NPC to do this, at least anyway, while you're working, you know, or flying your ship. You lose access to your subcomponents. All right, so what else do we have here? Oh, sounds. All right, so we got an NPC running towards the box and grabbing some ammo and reloading, and then running away again. Another NPC now comes from a different angle and collects a different thing, and then runs back again. That is really cool. Alright, so AI tech. So throughout March, AI tech progressed with EVA creating tech to allow characters to calculate 3D paths and systematically transition out of ships into space. So this again is for AI to do this. So last year, code was introduced to give a hierarchical structure to the subsumption master graph, which allows the team to create a state machine that describes the mental state of an NPC and preserves it across multiple activities. Okay. For example, surviving in a zero-G environment requires an NPC to have specific knowledge and handle requests differently from when on foot or piloting a ship. The team are utilizing the functionality to allow better structure for the master graph and handle all states with fewer transitions. This groundwork will ultimately provide a better systemic transition into and out of zero-G environments. I look forward to the day when NPCs like actually come out at like in zero-G, like to arrest you and that kind of thing. Like we talked about and we saw earlier, like the ability to like to surrender to NPCs mid-combat. Like I imagine that when we first of all get that mechanic, it's going to be you teleport. But before that teleportation, it'd be cool if like you actually got the NPCs to come aboard your ship to arrest you, which will then give you the ability, if beforehand like they were going to just teleport you and they had superior firepower, to kill whoever boards you, and then they're down one man on their ship. That'd be kind of interesting. So improvements were also made to the navigation links that describe the external linking of navigation mesh triangles. Essentially, two disconnected triangles connect and become traversable using animation, explicit locomotion linkage, etc. In doing so, the navigation link component was simplified to allow the explicit instantiation of extensions that can be different types of data to create external links. They currently have support for the following scenarios. So explicit offsets that can be used to customize enter and exit locations for doors, and animation-driven traversals such as an animation used to vault over an object or jump up and down. Alright, so essentially just making more complex actions for NPCs so they can go through many things, like go through lifts and not necessarily have some of those weird like obstructions that you can see in some games where an NPC won't follow you up a ledge, or, you know, in this game, like between ships and EVA and that kind of thing. Which I imagine will be very useful in like Squadron 42, because like if you ever have like a escort mission, they're going to be very, very two-dimensional and linear if, like, for instance, they can't follow you into many different kinds of locations. So the AI team began extending the melee system to improve the definition of combo attacks. The goal was to avoid using explicit mannequin transitions between states to reduce complexity in the setup, since they know the exact flow allowed between melee attacks. To achieve this, they introduced an automatic way to calculate the mannequin tag of the transitioning attack so that the structure is more straightforward. This also makes it easier to test chaining animations, ensuring poses perfectly match and that timing is easily adjusted. Right, so we'll be able to see NPCs basically attack in a more fluid way once they can finally go into punching. So for patrol tech, hot reload was implemented. This means the subsumption logic edits associated with the path are automatically reloaded in the editor, giving the designers immediate feedback on screen that they can quickly iterate on. The logic will also be validated if data changes without the editor running. During level loading, the save data attempts to match with the current updated logic too. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that means, even though it says right there, this means logic automatically reloads. I don't know what it means for us. Maybe, perhaps, it'll be a way of fixing it so NPCs don't, like, stand on chairs when they load in again. The team also spent time refactoring the usable code to better calculate usable attached mannequin tags related to items they want to manipulate. The code is now split to propagate the tags associated with the usable and the used channel, including the one coming from the tool. Once calculated, they'll merge and pass into the animation request to select the appropriate animation. The unification of the usables and operator seats flow continued, which now only uses 2 blocks in the movement plan for the usable component. The actor state machine communicates the different states with the components such as entering a seat or starting idle, which is then propagated and evaluated to understand when to consider the success for entering and exiting the usable. And propagated just means, what the heck? Okay, never mind. I have no idea what propagate means. Maybe somebody can explain what propagated means in this context, because it's not about breeding. So yeah, AI will now be able to essentially know when to get out of seats and that kind of thing. So from the communication system, AI content fixed the automatic creation of group channels based on the target of dialogue. This allows them to control who is allowed to talk to a specific target to avoid overlapping when the group channel type is specified. They also improved the system, allowing communication context to override silence on a specific channel. This gives designers more granular control over the pacing of voice lines used by AI to communicate readability of their actions. So we don't really have group speak at the moment when it comes to AI talking on channels, but I'm guessing this is for something that is for further down the line. All right, and we have a new video. It's interesting up here before with the reloading and stuff and the components. They didn't necessarily talk about any of that stuff. All right, check this out. Automatically create group channels. Wait, what? Based on the target. So case 1. Alright, so that's same channel ID, different targets. So they're all like speaking to the same person. I'm gonna go ahead and just maybe in the music here, just kill that for real quick. Alright, so for this one here, same channel ID, different targets. So we got the guys in yellow talking to 2 players.
Let's get this over with.
And that kind of sucks.
Let's get this over with. Walked away. Let's see what you got. Let's get this over with. You fucked up. Let's get this over with.
All right, so same channel ID, same target.
You fucked up now. Let's get this over with.
So now,
should have just walked away.
Right, so now the AI are in the same group talking to that person. They know not to talk over each other. But what happens now when, like, you got two players in that location? The video doesn't show.
Let's get this over with.
Yeah, let's get this over with, huh? All right, so animation. So March saw the animation team create sets for tourists and tour guides and make plans for creatures. On the facial side, a mocap shoot was done for an upcoming event, and the pipeline was improved for the mocap select tool. So again, yeah, this Horizon landing zone is gonna have tour guides and tourists walking around, which will be kind of interesting to see. Then for art and characters, the character art team progressed with refinery decks, assets for Horizon, and NPC outfits for Alpha 314's hospitals. A new mining-themed set for an upcoming patch is nearing completion, while armor for Alpha 3.15 moved through the pipeline. Research and development also began for armor props and interiors in support for the physicalized inventory. This involves refactoring old armor sets to add interiors and setting up the tech to allow armor sets to exist as standalone objects that can be carried by the player. So we've seen carrying helmets, and we've kind of seen carrying a jacket, but yeah, being able to carry armor, and especially heavy armor, will be kind of interesting to see. You know, like how it changes depending on the different kinds of clothes and that kind of thing. The mining themed set of armor, I imagine, is the Grey Cat concept armor that we saw before, which is like a more like a medium armor kind of style thing instead of like the thick, heavy survival gear that we have. And then art environments. Alongside support for Alpha 3.13, the modular team moved the colonial outposts from white box to gray box, with gameplay considerations and functionality being added to the various modules. The docking arms and lobbies were also finalized and will be live in an upcoming event. The landing zone team progressed with Orison with the new cloud tech, enabling stunning vistas above the Crusader gas cloud. Work on the platforms is nearing completion, with final polish currently being completed. The latest iteration of the exhibition halls were finished too. So, exhibition halls, I imagine, don't mean exhibition halls in Crusader or Orison. I imagine that's like next year's exhibition halls, but maybe perhaps what they're talking about here is for IAE. And if that's the case, then this must be the surface layer of Orison or Crusader. So the organics team finalized the new cave entrances, produced new flora for the Orison habitation platforms, and supported the gas cloud tech needed for Crusader. So flora on Orison, so I'm guessing like molds and stuff, or maybe just like potted plants and stuff. But I'd imagine the next IAE would likely be in Orison. Yeah, next year. Alright, so for ships, in the UK, the ship team wrapped up the majority of the Crusader Hercules, with only the A2's bomb release mechanism requiring further attention, and, you know, further complaints on Spectrum. As an as yet unannounced ship continued through the final art phase. That's interesting to know. So we're going to be getting a new ship soon. It would make sense. 3.14 only has the Taurus in it right now, with only one interior area and an exterior polish and damage pass to go. March saw the Aegis Redeemer progress through the final art phase, with the exterior and man turrets both nearing completion. The grey box phase was finished for the remote turrets and landing gear 2. So I like how it says with only one interior area and damage pass to go. It means that whatever ship this is not only not a single seater, but it might also have more than one room. Kind of interesting. I'm hoping for not a fighter. So more ships were converted to the hard surface shader to make them paint ready, and wear and tear was looked at to make it consistent across the ship lineup. The gold standard pass was completed for the Gladius, with the team now moving on to the Saber. Alright, so there we go, from the horse's mouth here. Gold standard, what does that mean? So gold standard was essentially a phrase that Chris used to describe where he wanted the state of ships to be. So that means having toggleable buttons on your dashboard, having the HUD being a certain way, having the components on your ship being physicalized. And with 3.13, we can now walk around a Gladius and open every single hatch, which means that the Gladius, according to CIG now, has reached gold standard. And now the next ship is the Saber. Cool. So the US-based team continued to focus on the Tumbril Nova, specifically finishing the art alongside design, who worked on movement, treads, and the overall experience. They also worked alongside vehicle tech, vehicle experience, and QA to ensure the tank is up to standard before release. Progress was made on the Constellation Taurus, and bugs were squashed for the vehicles coming in Alpha 3.13. Yes, so gold standard except for physicalized damage, which who knows when that will come in, because that's like such a change from what we have currently when it comes to ship combat, ship balancing, ship damage in general. Right now, ships have a HP pool, and depending on, regardless of what goes down to like 0, it blows up after a certain amount of damage is done. But with what they want for gold standard ship damage modeling, they want it to be physicalized, completely physicalized. But that's systemic and not ship specific. Alright, so art weapons. So March saw the weapons team progress with a size 7 bearing ballistic Gatling gun before completing close out work and polishing for the mounted gun asset. The multi-tool salvage attachment and standalone tools went through the first pass blockout and were added to a development build for early testing. Cool. The Ultiflex Novia was iterated on, with the team improving the rigging setup and making sure it was working as intended for animation. What is an Ultiflex Novia? Does anybody know? Several other tasks were completed, including support for the Nova's S5 cannon, bug fixing for Alpha 313, and updates to MedPen and other devices for the upcoming medical gameplay. Ah, yes, yes. Okay, alright, so yeah, the Ultiflex Nova, I think, is the Shroud of the Ancients tie-in crossbow. Cool, I'm really looking forward to that, but medical gameplay and medical missions, I can't wait for, you know, like, give us more non-combat things to do. Can't wait. And even, like, medical gameplay is one of those things that will have combat applications too, so doubly can't wait. Alright, so audio. So throughout March, the audio team worked on content and features for Alpha 313 alongside supporting some upcoming trailers. Okay, trailers plural. We know that the IAE is coming soon, so I imagine that's probably what they're talking about, but we also know there's at least one upcoming ship that's on that roadmap too. So on the ship side, they focused on the UI and practical SFX for ship-to-ship and ship-to-station docking. They also looked into improving ambience design across all derelict ships following work on the new derelict freelancer variant. The active features team created audio for the trolley push and pull mechanic and crafted foley and sound effects for the mounted turret gameplay. They also say, we have been very excited to be working on the Nova Tonk, designing and implementing SFX and the vehicle movements, moving parts, turrets, and notable cannon. So the community team then go on to say that, well, they started a ship naming announcement. Oh yes, of course, to be able to name your ship and the guide for that. And of course, for International Women's Day, they made some posts and other things like that. Let's move on to the engine team. So in March, engineering added physics support for multiple solar systems. A new grid for multiple solar systems. What does that mean exactly? I always thought that, like, Stanton was a map, and then Pyro is another map. What does it mean by adding support for multiple solar systems? A new grid type, so GT solar system, that replicates the configuration of the current root grid was added, along with the ability to skip the inside-out checks and allow multiple instances of such grids to overlap without entities randomly transitioning between them. I love reading the engineering parts so much, I really understand everything they're talking about. To ease debugging, which can be difficult without a visual representation of what's going on in the physical world, a simple debug ray tracing framework was added to visualize the results of ray world intersection RWI checks. This has been hugely useful already and allowed the team to fix various bugs quickly. The team will also be using this to optimize RWI in general, as it accurately uncovers performance issues otherwise hidden in the game's RWI queries. Alright, you'll have to forgive me for skipping a few of these things, but here we go. Work on the G12 renderer continued, so that's important, with the internal resolution scaling and native resolution rendering being reworked. The render graph that controls the scheduling of render passes and associated resource management was merged into the main development branch. Alongside this, more existing features were ported to Gen 12, such as emissive lights and object motion blur. and the shader parser was refactored in parts to allow for faster processing, especially for core dependency tracking. So the G12 renderer, of course, is that pie-in-the-sky thing that's supposed to make the game work a bit better than it currently does with its old DirectX thing that they're using at the moment. Alright, so engineering made great progress with volumetric clouds last month, with tint support being added to allow more flexibility on the art side when coloring clouds for exotic planets. The multi-scanner solution also received various subtle improvements, including taking an atmosphere's optical depth along shadow rays into account. Cloud shaping was further improved to provide a better sense of local volume, while support for shadow refinement was added to further contribute to cloud detail. Alongside these visual improvements, initial optimizations were implemented to speed up the ray tracing process, and the implementation of an efficient empty space skipping scheme has begun. Alright. And let's move into features. So, characters and weapons. So the character features team reduced the update frequency of certain character components based on their distance from players. This was possible due to the changes made to the underlying update logic by the engine team earlier this year. A component can now be told to update every other frame or every nth frame, and when it does, it's informed of how much time has elapsed since the last update. Early prototypes suggest using elapsed rather than frame time allows for a surprisingly early reduction in update frequency of the character state logic as long as the character visual updates remain at the per frame frequency. As with any optimization, this is currently being tested before implemented, so just optimizations. One key feature being developed in March was the trolley push and pull mechanic, where players can grab movable props and push them or pull them around. The actor and physics teams worked closely to iterate on the controls and feel of moving these larger props where the weight of the prop, weight of the cargo, loaded into it, and the surface thereon affects handling and behavior. So the heavier the item on the actual thing, the more different things will move around. That's kind of big. If the input is greater than the actual resulting movement, the player character leans into the prop to show the extra effort required. The wheels are physically simulated as a constrained sphere, and with a modeled wheel synchronizing with the sphere's movement to procedurally rotate caster and tire. So, I wonder, how much does a player character weigh? And if we were to test this and push this flat trolley around, if somebody stands on the trolley, will that affect it, or do players not count? Players around 85 kilograms? Yeah, I wonder if that actually does anything. And of course, here are the two different trolleys. We have the flat one, and we have this tiered one here. And what's interesting is, again, that they mentioned that in the roadmap, there's going to be persistent hangars for players, and that's where this is going to be useful for, to move things around in your hangar. Maybe you want to have like ammo crates in a specific location to arm your ships and that kind of thing, or whatever the heck that would be in your hangar. You would need these things to move that stuff around. Alright, so features, gameplay. So the gameplay features team spent March preparing features for Alpha 3.13, fixing critical bugs and planning for future initiatives. The US-based team continued to work on two new Mobi-Glass features, the Reputation System app and the Asset Manager. The engineers finalized the TDD for the Asset Manager and began to create the provider that will manage a majority of the application logic. Meanwhile, design completed polishing tasks and bug fixing for the Reputation System app, now known as the Delphi, which will be launching in Alpha 3.13. And I don't know what Delphi stands for, but I think it's an acronym for something. Alright, so in the US, the team continued to plan for the upcoming cargo refactor, with the goal of physicalizing cargo contained within the grid. This refactor is quite extensive, as the cargo and commodity system is intertwined with several other areas. The team will also convert the commodity kiosk from Flash to building blocks and tie it into the Asset Manager. Progress was also made on the next dynamic event, which is now in the final stages of implementation. The engineers fixed any remaining bugs while the designers focused on audio integration and polishing tasks. Alright, then in mission live and content, so alongside content for upcoming events, the features team progressed with a new security system that allows them to identify when a player enters a location they don't have permission to. This allows AI to act accordingly without the need to give the player a crime stat. That is such good news. Like, hopefully if you have a bounty, then the AI won't interact. Hopefully if you're a bounty hunter and you have an active bounty on somebody, then you will be spared AI shooting at you. They also began working on features for Quarter 2 and beyond, including the new Starfarer and Caterpillar Derelict used in Alpha 313's timed delivery missions, and implemented FPS cave missions and new harvestables. Space combat missions locations were also quadrupled around Crusader, and progress continued on the Pyro system. So there are now 4 times as many space combat mission locations in Crusader, apparently. Alright, so the vehicle features team. So March saw the vehicle features team progress with docking. So Merlin to Constellation docking is largely complete, with the team dealing with bugs and feedback from Evocati testing. The last step involves finalizing the physics of how the ships connect. Right now, if you do it in speed, then there's an explosion. The team heavily refactored and partially rewrote the air traffic control system to account for the docking arms and used in ship-to-station docking. Now docking arms are fully integrated with the station control and benefit from all the features of air traffic control, such as loitering around stations, spawning and despawning ships, and hailing for docking through the comms menu. Changes were also made to align docking arms with the procedural universe tools, which are used to create bases and space stations. Work was also done to integrate docking with the other gameplay systems such as personal inner thought, so players can initiate docking with the interaction wheel. Lastly, for docking, a large number of edge cases were worked through to ensure it's as polished as possible. For example, the Constellation quantum traveling while the Merlin was docking caused the Merlin to get stuck, and players exiting the Merlin while docked to a moving constellation caused a player to fall to space, and yep, I've experienced that one. So development of the thruster ground VFX mentioned in last month's report continued. This has been improved and expanded on since then, with the team working on aerodynamic wake effects that cause dust to be kicked up when ships are flown close to the ground at high speed. That's really cool. We saw this faked once before in the, I think it was the Nox trailer. It'd be really cool to see this finally be a thing for ships, like all ships. And focus was on 3D rendering inside MFD screens to give the team more options in building the MFDs they want. So also, of course, like once we get this like wake effect stuff, we'll then get them on water as well. I think that Chris, like I think it was when they showed up Hurston for the first time, was like, yeah, we want that on water. Then finally, the missile guidance and control refactor, or the missile operator mode, or MOM, made great progress, with missiles flying much more predictably in recent playtests. And yeah, we had a clip like showing the Constellation firing missiles, and they look so cool now. Alright, so graphics and VFX programming. So the graphics team spent early March fixing bugs. For example, the render-to-texture RTT system didn't have a fixed memory budget and was dependent on how it was used by the game. However, this could sometimes lead to out-of-memory issues, particularly when running at higher resolutions. Now the memory reserve for RTT systems is linked to the screen resolution, because higher resolution outputs require higher resolution immediate textures. If the fixed budget is exceeded, they now dynamically down-res the RTTs until they fit, which ensures stability in extreme scenarios, which kind of basically means that, you know, run your game at 1080p and you'll have better RTT, unless you have a really good system. They also began planning for the transition to the Gen 12 renderer to better understand when each milestone will be delivered to help determine the balance of staff working on the transition features and bugs. The VFX programming team split time between bugs, fire, SDF shields, and particle lighting. The fire feature is a long-term task, with the current focus on fire spreading between rooms, light spawning, and repair. The first iteration of SDF shields was prepared for release, and we have them now, and they're pretty cool. The upcoming update improves the glow effect and how the shaping tech works. which is responsible for wrapping the impact effects around the curvature of the hull. Particle lighting is a new model that gives higher quality and more consistent and physically plausible results. So essentially what this is saying is that, like, on the roadmap for the deliverables window for 3.13, we have one entry for SDF shields, and we also have one for in 3.14. So in 3.13, essentially what's happening there is that we have the ability now to patch up all the shield holes. 3.14's SDF shield stuff is just cosmetic, as far as they've said here. So in lighting, last month the lighting team supported the upcoming docking feature, providing unique moods for the R&R space stations and more military-minded security docks. Work on the docking arm continued, including prototype animations for the lighting as the arm extends and retracts. So here is a video here of, I think, maybe lighting of the docking ports. This is the observation deck. I can't wait till we see dynamic lighting like in the Javelin that we saw way back when now, as the player was walking through the ship. I guess this also means that, like, depending on the different stations you're on, like, lighting will be different depending on the mood and the character of those stations. I agree, the lighting's really cool. The docking ports look kind of dark. It's kind of, you know, it's still very sci-fi, you know, but I guess that's the intent for this. It's pretty militaristic still, not very, you know, like a homely, not very, I don't want to say the word realistic, but it's very Spartan, very Spartan. And yeah, there we go. Looking forward to these things being in use, but as you can see, that there's a fair distance between the beginning of that area and, of course, the ship that you go to. They'll probably have to, like, work on that and make it a little bit more streamlined as time goes on. And here we have a different observation deck with cooler lighting, so different stations, different decks will have different lighting. So the question is, you know, why are these colors so long? I feel like it's because the ships in Star Citizen are so awkwardly shaped. So a lot of times you'll need to push them as far away as possible from the station just to be able to connect them to the station. Maybe as time goes on in the future, the length at which the collars extend will depend on the ship and their own personal needs, so that you won't necessarily need to have this. It also means that you can, like, have multiple ships closer together, I suppose, because, like, of room. That being said, the stations are huge. But yeah, it's a clearance reason. But depending on the ship, that extension doesn't necessarily need to be as big, I feel. And there we go. Another docking collar, another station, with this time around cooler lighting. And then we have a couple more. So this says docking lobby sec dock lighting target test. Ah, there we go. So you can see now the lights are trailing towards the ship. And we got, like, an emergency alarm, like a light to the right-hand side as well. With the, I believe this is an Idris connected to it. A Javelin? That's what I said. Come on, guys. Be as good at Star Citizen as I am. Come on. I'm just testing you guys, you know? Just testing you. Yeah, we just need like a travelator or something on the floors here. On the left-hand side, you see that over there? We need a travelator to help you move faster running towards your ship. And we'll be good. But that's a fair distance. Alright, we have one more of these videos. So, that one said lighting target test. This one here said lighting variant. And this one here just says lighting variant as well. So we had the warm lighting variant, the cool lighting variant. We had the lights and stuff for like you know, the trailing lights and the alarm lights. Then we have this one over here, which is light group update trigger test, whatever that means. Okay, so they walked inside and then the mood light triggered. And okay. I must say I hate the helmet, but otherwise, yeah. No, no, bad. So yeah, different rooms will now have lighting triggers and stuff. You go into your hab, you can turn on different lights depending on what you want, which is cool. Alright, so they also supported Alpha 313 with bug fixing, optimizations to the non-commercial space station overlays, and new cave entrances. Support was also given to the UI team for the new reputation interfaces and Mobiglass. Work also continued on the hospitals for Orison and New Babbage, with the team working closely with environmental art and design on the lobbies, pharmacy shop, individual floors, and recovery rooms. So here's Brentworth Care Center on Microtech, which is big. How freaking big this place is. Massive floors. Alright. And of course we got a sakura tree here just in time for like cherry blossom season. Anyway, so narrative. So narrative's march kicked off with a small motion capture shoot, the first since the start of the pandemic, to pick up some characters for upcoming events. Members of the LA-based team worked remotely to provide direction and work with the animators, capture specialists, audio team, and actors who were on set in Manchester, UK. They provided general support for Alpha 313, tackling mission fixes and adding names and descriptions for the various new items. They also worked with the mission teams on upcoming content, including future events, general missions, and voiceover sessions for future locations too. There were also several lore releases on the website, including the re-release of the portfolio for the armor manufacturer Caldera, the final installment of Sid and Cyrus, another installment of OpNet, new Galactopedia entries, and the 100th issue of Jump Point. Members of the narrative team also appeared on the Star Citizen Live for Lore Builders episode, where they built one of the outlaw factions in Pyro, and then they kind of touched upon the fire cats, what are they called, as well. The Fire Rats? Fire Rats. So, player relations. So, March saw PR hire additional staff to support the growing needs of the service and backer base. They also worked on ship naming and ran a Vocati PTU tests each night for Alpha 313. March saw the props team support several locations, including colonialism outposts, with some assets going to Greybox. The Greybox Pass also began for hospitals, including the bed and gurney, which will be a big part of the gameplay experience. Will it now? The bed or the gurney, or both? Because we have cooperative locomotion now, we have the trolleys. Gurneys are just trolleys you lie on. So does that mean that they want some medical gameplay to be you playing as a medical professional, pushing people around in gurneys? That'd be kind of cool. Alright, so they also work closely with an AI content and AI features to produce template geometry with new feature usables, such as the shopkeeper and tourist, and fixed a large number of bugs. Alright, so QA helped QA test a whole bunch of stuff. In Frankfurt, QA continued to support the feature teams. For AI, they've performed sanity checks and stuff. For the AI QA team, they shifted focus to service stress testing and minimum PC specs. Ooh, I do not envy QA doing that. to help improve the overall stability of the game. QA worked alongside the tools team in their continued testing of DataForge, Star Worlds, Excel Core, and the Sandbox editor. Work also began on a new tool that will allow QA to take a more proactive approach to testing. Then systemic services and tools. So the systemic services and tools team pushed forwards with various resources for the public presentation of Quantum. Okay, so we have a representation already of Quantum. Well, we had a demo of Quantum in 2019. So this is going to be the public representation side. I didn't know we were going to get one. Service-wise, they put the finished touches on the AI to info service that ties directly into Quantum and various other services. Development into new services began in earnest, specifically on new NPC spawning and ATC service systems. General upgrades were also made to various tools and systems to allow for easier workflow for developers. In tech animation, most of tech animation teams spent last month iterating on the in-house facial pipeline. They're aiming for a faster and more intuitive approach to facial expressions, authoring for the complicated facial systems, part of which will incorporate the smooth skinning decomposition technology from last month's R&D. Okay, I'm not really sure what facial animations and skinning and decomposition have in common. They maintained and triaged assets from several other departments to ensure the project structure, builds, and animation systems are kept in a stable state, and helped author and refine some head and body assets to enable the animation teams to work directly in Myre. Finally, assets that will be used as the basis in development of various creatures were completed. Okay, whenever I hear the word creatures, I get excited because, of course, we know space whales are coming in at some point. If Horizon is going to be as complete as having NPC tour guides and tourists, I wonder if maybe perhaps we might also see like a little head or tail of a space whale at some point as well. Alright, so Turbulent. So, Turbulent Game Services continued working on server meshing, onboarding more team members along the way. They also delivered the first demo of a fleet management system currently deployed on internal development environments. Fleet management? Okay. The configuration service responsible for distributing client configurations to game clients was also finalized. The team supported the upcoming Alpha 3.13 release, specifically adding new features to the reputation service, such as the ability to notify players when their reputation changes, as well as view, lock, and unlock reputation and view reputation history. Test passes were also performed on services to validate them for upcoming release. So this month, the Live Tools team continued work on crash handling pipeline with fixes to Sentry and Jira linking, and created a monitor to watch the Elasticsearch stream for errors and then into Sentry. They also created software in support of tools developed by the Montreal-based location team and created code to allow the Hex Gateway to talk to the Diffusion game services. Cool. Alright. So UI. The UI tech team supported other teams' users' interface work on the Reputation app, adding new functionality and fixing bugs as needed, and progressed with several small but vital features, including text formatting and tooltips that will be used throughout the future UI. They also further developed the underlying tech for the new roadmap systems and ported some older UI to building blocks to help with future-proofing and performance. The artists entered the pre-production phase for the upcoming medical UI, with visual target concepts signed off and functional prototypes ready for full production in April. Okay. The UI was also polished for radar and scanning gameplay, both in vehicles and on foot. I can't wait for on-foot scanning, and just like on-foot being able to be more aware of things. Because then again, this is also going to bring back that old combat radar in a new form, using not only like sound and visuals, but also emissions of weapons and everything else in order to see different markers and contacts on foot. I look forward to it. Alright, so vehicle tech. So throughout March, the vehicle technical team progressed with the updates to the radar scanning system, focusing on ping to make finding distant objects a more satisfying experience than looking for giant cubes. UI and VFX elements are currently being implemented. Locomotion and tread movement for the Tumble Nova Tonk was iterated on to ensure it feels appropriately tonky across all planetary bodies. A project to ensure ship landing gear functions properly in all areas of the game is nearing completion. This involved properly syncing landing gear with the server to make sure they function properly in all non-flight scenarios. They also closed out several tasks for Alpha 313 to make the launch as smooth and engaging as possible. Then the VFX team, last but not least. During March, the VFX team fine-tuned and optimized the SDF shield impact effects before the release. This was a real team effort with VFX programmers, artists, and QA all working together to bring this important feature work to fruition. So effects were also created for the Tumble Nova, including its main weapon, the big-ass tank barrel thing, the cannon. This included prototyping a subtle shockwave effect that displaces loose surface matter on the ground and on the vehicle itself. While this prototype isn't guaranteed to make it in time for the tank's initial release, the groundwork will prove useful for a variety of other effects that utilize physicalized shockwaves, like the Idris's railgun. The Crusader Hercules effects were completed in March too. A prototype for thruster wind volume effects was also worked on, which will allow vehicle thrusters to better interact with loose surface matter on planets and other locations to give thrusters a more powerful feel as they hover in locations with gravity. Alright, so in conclusion, we'll see you next month. Alright, so that's the end of the monthly report for Star Citizen. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next month for the next one. As always, I've been Myre, and until next time, be good.